bums. Ahoy hoy, welcome back to Gavin's apparently noisy guitar amp, Gavin's Grotty guitars. It's a Fender. I'm afraid it isn't. It's a Squier. Sort of an interesting one at that as well. You will see that that is not a standard paint job that comes from the factory. Now, this is a 1996 Chinese Squier. But there's a lot of interesting things to be learnt from this. This was probably my first project after the West Tone Raider, which is the very first one of Gavin's Grotty guitar, so a lot lower video quality and certainly sound quality. He says hoping that this is actually recording this time. I picked this up second hand, a 1996. How do I know it's 1996? Two reasons. Number one, there is a stamp on the back of the neck, made in China. Look that up, it's from the Ahoy. Yes, Ahoy factory in Zhangzhou in China. And it is 1996, serial number 18425. The second thing is that it's 2021 as we record, and that says 50th anniversary on it. This year is the 75th anniversary, so it's 25 whole years old. Let's look at some interesting things about this. It was the guitar I did up after the West Tone Raider. So the West Tone Raider, if you don't remember, I took all the paint off it and gave it a French polish. Same thing here, with some other changes. So this was a black Squier Strat. Took all the paint off, took forever on this. Ended up having to be a sanding job. Paint stripper does not work. Heat sort of worked, and I didn't even have a proper sander back then. So this is probably 15 years ago. So this was doing it very carefully and over a long period of time. Things you should, and then I tried to give it a sunburst with no knowledge of how to do a sunburst, using dyes available from my local hardware store. And in Prestwood, that's not many. It was Hildreth's. But what can you see here? I mean, apart from a dodgy paint job, an obviously replaced scratch plate, and actually very nice hot Fender pickups. Can't remember what they are. I don't think they're Hot Texas, but there's something like that. I bolted down the trem. Don't like the trems. But what you'll notice is a massive change in colour from here to here. Is that because I can't colour properly? Well, no. These bodies are usually 5 or 6 piece if you look down the end. Plank, 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 plank. Bolt them together, sand over the top. Now, if you're going to paint them, you need to have a nice flat top in order so there's no ripples and you can't see the joins. There's lots of ways of doing that. The easiest one is sanding it, using a bit of grain filler, and then using a solid colour over the top. Instead of sanding, what these chaps do is put a veneer over the top. So what you can see around the outline here and there is a very thin, maybe 1mm, and it's the same on the back. You can see there's real timber, and here's a veneer that's been placed over the top. Why is that? Well, I guess it saves on sanding and paint. Although I remember this having at least 5 layers of horrible black thick paint on it before I put French polish over the top, which after all these years does look beautiful now. You know, French polish does take a while to set, that, apart from the paint job, this was one of my favourite guitars. I'd always been brought up in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, of everybody has very thin necks, very flat fretboards, very big frets, and that's where this one's slightly different. Strats usually have quite a radius on the fretboard. This one doesn't. The fretboard material is also very thin, so if we have a zoom in on a picture here, or earlier or later, you'll see that the fret markers on the side are actually halfway between the fretboard and the neck. So they've used a thin piece of nice timber. Looks like Pal Ferro to me. The other thing that's very odd about this, okay, yes, I replaced the name on the top, is the frets. The frets are tiny. I don't know if that's antique style, vintage style, or what have you. But they're very, very small. Now this leads to a couple of issues. If you've never tried a guitar with small frets, try and hunt one down, because it's very interesting how it sounds and how it plays differently. That's not a good noise, is it? I didn't want to have to do this today. The rest of this video will be published later, when I've taken this bugger apart, restrung it and rewired it, because clearly there is something wrong. And unfortunately, it's not that. Maybe that's why I put this away. Bums. Ahoy hoy, and welcome back in the room. Some time has passed. What I found on investigation of this was quite extraordinary. One of my things that I feel quite badly about is that I've always thought my soldering is very bad. On opening this up from when I did it 17 years ago, could be that long, my wiring then was awful. My wiring now is absolutely beautiful compared to what it was. Just astonishing. Found out a whole bunch of other things actually on more careful investigation. This wasn't French polished. This is lightly coated with nitrocellulose from a can. Neck as well. Astonishing. And the pickups are Hot Texas or Texas Specials. They're the same pickup, but one's US and one isn't. It's whatever it is. Few more things that I worked out on looking at this closer. Yes, these are tiny, tiny little mini frets. Really small compared to big fat ones. It's almost like playing fretless, but it isn't. The other thing which I find really quite astonishing is pickup height. These were all almost touching the strings. So two things happened there. One was that, of course, it's a very loud output. Second of all, I was getting strange harmonics. Oh, something's fallen there. And I was noticing it only on G&D strings. Why would that be? Well, because the staggered pole pieces here, the G&D ones are actually higher than the others. And the magnetic field from those was causing a very weird effect, where it's actually pulling the string down, and there was a harmonic being caused because of that. Very odd indeed. But what I've really found great about this is that it plays well. Okay, there's a lot of things that I would do differently 17 years on. My favourite, of course, sand. Sand some more. Think you finished sanding? You've just started. Think you finished sanding again? You're about halfway. Then continue sanding some more. I know how to burst a colour slightly better than here. So, sanding, finishing and dyeing and wiring and setup, all of which have improved enormously in the last few years. So this resurrection piece is great, but let's have a listen briefly. Oh, there's the issue. I thought it was that. Turbo distortion, Boss turbo distortion is now out of the loop. Low battery, sucks all the sound. Bridge. Bridge in the middle. Hopefully on that, let's move the microphone a bit. Sorry. You can hear it's got more of a quack. Middle. Neck and middle. And just the neck. Does all that nicely, doesn't it? Now I've done the wiring, now I've done a bit of a setup, even though the frets are massively tiny and the strap is clearly off an old bag I had, this is a superb sounding Strat. It's got everything you need. You can bend it. It's got the quack in the middle places. It overdrives beautifully. It fuzzes well. It plays well. What more can be said? Honestly, I think I prefer bigger frets, but that's it. Get yourself an old Squier Strat and give it a treat with some nice pickups and a good setup. Until next time, and I know what's coming, so it's a bit of a problem. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. Don't forget to subscribe down there with a fish face. Other videos there, and because you've been good, here's some more videos of the cat. Toodle pip. So Leavenworth, what's it like being a cat?